Today we got a story time of a spoiled kid who, when the teacher failed him on a test, the kid kind of went insane and then went ahead and kind of destroyed the teacher's car and assumed that, he wouldn't get in trouble. But yeah, obviously the guy got in a lot of trouble. But anyways, this story is probably one of the craziest ones I've heard in a while, so I thought I had to tell it on the channel. So yeah, sit back, relax, leave a like on the video to claim your free nothing, and let's get right into it. So the subscriber who sent in today's story, we're going to call him Theo. I got that name from the comment section, so if you want me to use your name, your friend's name, your dog's name, really doesn't matter who, but if you want me to use a name in a video or in a future video, leave it in a comment down below. I really do try and use as many names as I can from the comment section. Anyways, right, so Theo, the subscriber who sent in today's story, he told me about a story that happened to him back when he was in 4th grade. Anyways, right, so Theo is just in, his 4th grade class, and in his class there's another kid who we're just going to call the spoiled kid. I don't even feel like giving this guy a name. We're just going to call him spoiled kid. Like when there's a Minecraft kid, we just call him Minecraft kid. Anyways, right, so the spoiled kid was kind of newer to the school, but he wasn't super new. He got there a year ago, but other than that, he didn't know a lot of people. And the reason why he didn't know a lot of people wasn't necessarily because he was that new. It was because he was kind of like a massive jerk. And when you're a massive jerk, you're probably not going to get that many friends. It just is what it is. But anyways, right, there was a pretty massive test coming up for the class, or at least it was massive in the sense that it was the big assignment, or it was a really big assignment that they had. And by assignment, it was a test, it wasn't a project, so you had to study a lot for it. But the spoiled kid wasn't just spoiled, he was also a little bit delusional, and he kind of thought that oh, no shot he needed to study for this test. And he was telling everyone about how he was just gifted, and legitimately a couple days before the test, the teacher was all right guys, so we're gonna divide you up into study groups so you can talk to each other, just so you have more preparation for this test. Honestly, the teacher wanted it to be so the kids would be over prepared, they would all do well, and they'd all feel really good. And so, he was kind of having all these study groups. He was assigning studying for homework, specific projects to get them ready. And today they kind of had study groups as the daily class activity. And the teacher decided to randomly select them into groups so you wouldn't just go with your friend and talk with your friend and not actually do the assignment. So the teacher randomly selected them up or split them up. And sure enough, right, Theo, the subscriber, and the spoiled kid and a couple of other people were assigned to be in a group. And so, they were given a sheet of questions and they talked a little bit about the questions. And the idea was you had to go through and talk with your group about how you would respond. This class was not a math class where there's one answer or something. It was more, I think it was either a history class or, I don't know, a geography. I think it was more history-esque. I wasn't actually told what class it was, but I do know from other details in the story that it wasn't a science or technology or math-based class. It was more of something that you could give more general answers to. But anyways, right, when they sat down in the groups and they were given some questions about topics they've covered and how they would answer them, Theo went around and he was saying what he wanted to say, and then he had his friends say, not his friends, but the other people in the group, they said what they wanted to say. And when it eventually came around to the spoiled kid was I'm not even gonna bother answering. And they're bro, what do you mean? And he's I've not been studying. And they're dude, what do you mean? The test is in a couple days. That's really important. And he's I'm just gonna be built different, bro. When the test comes, and I'm just gonna I'm gonna crush it, dude. You don't even understand how well I'm gonna do. And they're all just man, I understand that you can kind of conceptually get your way to some of these questions, but there's still a lot of information you need to base your answers off of. You can't just walk into this test without studying. And the spoiled kid was you know what, maybe you guys can't do that. Maybe you guys can't just walk into this test without spending hours and hours of cramming useless information into your brain. But I'm just built different, man. I'm just different. I don't know about you, but when I was born, I was just significantly smarter, and I still am significantly smarter. I feel bad for you guys that you have to spend all your free time studying for this class. All I can say is I don't, and I'm going to do at least twice as well as all of you. They kind of looked at each other because they're twice as well. That means you're expecting that we get a 50 or less, because otherwise it's impossible. So they all kind of look at this kid bro, what are you even talking about? All right, dude, sure, fair enough. You're just built different, whatever, man. That's fine. In this point, right, Theo and the other people in his group kind of knew that this kid was a little bit delusional, a little bit spoiled, had never been told no in his life. So they were kind of like ready for this. They kind of were just like aware that this was something that happened. So they're like, all right, whatever, man. Like, that's fine. That's fair enough. And I mean, obviously, they thought to themselves, like, this kid's insane. Like, he's going to fail. And if he doesn't fail, he's at least not going to do twice as well as us, because, like, that's impossible unless we get like a 30% or something. But yeah, so anyways, they just kind of like went on like asking questions to each other, and they kind of just ignored the spoiled kid because they know that like if they asked him a question, he would go on the same rampage about how he doesn't need this practice, he doesn't need this study because he's built different, and that he feels bad for them because they have to study because they're not inherently as genius and clever and 1000 IQ as he is. And yeah, so anyways, the next couple days roll around and it's the day of the test. And Theo, the subscriber, had been studying quite a bit the days before, and he felt really prepared. And on the day of the test, he went in there and he started working. He sat down, the teacher went around, plopped down the test on his desk, and he was like a little nervous, but as he was getting into the questions, he was like, oh, I remember this from the reading. Oh, I remember this from like studying it. Oh, I remember this from like reviewing it and doing similar questions. Like, no problem at all. And he was about halfway through the test when he looked up, and sure enough, right, the spoiled kid was walking up to the front of the room with the test already done. And for a second, right, Theo was thought like, wait a minute, was this kid not joking? Is this kid like actually like really just inherently smart and didn't study? Because right, a lot of times when someone finishes a test really early, they are so well practiced, or they just know the questions so well that they are just able to blow through them past the normal speed of the average person in the class. However, right, that's not always the case, as sometimes in classes that I didn't do well in, I was still one of the first people to finish my tests because I just was like, I went through I can't explain it really. I was just fast going through the questions. And it's not as if I was like rushing through them. I was just happened to be fast. It didn't mean that I was right. It just meant I happened to be fast. But either way, right, so, Theo's sitting there kind of like, wow, maybe the spoiled kid is actually really smart because he did just finish the test. And he's like, I guess he was right. And Theo was sitting there like, no way. He must have been studying, right? He must have just been lying about not studying. And then he was sitting there thinking to himself, and he's like, wait a minute. What if the spoiled kid actually is just really that smart? What if he's just able to figure this stuff out and has like a massive database in his brain with some complex AI that's able to problem solve from information he doesn't even know? And he's just sitting there for a second, kind of just like caught off guard by what happened. And then he just kind of snaps out of it, gets back to doing the test, and finishes it and feels really good about it. By the way, comment TEST if you made it this far into the video, TEST. I'll be trying to heart a bunch of those comments. You can even comment it more than one time if you'd like. But yeah, don't feel bad if I don't heart it. I'm doing a lot of stuff right now, and I barely can heart any comments. But the comments I will heart will be the ones that say the secret word, which is TEST. Anyways, right, so a couple days pass, and they're sitting in class, and the teacher's like, all right, guys, I finally finished grading all your tests. I'm going to come around, hand it back to you. Most of you guys did really, really well. This is a really good show out for you guys. I think we're going to plan a class party because like the average was so good. And he was just like pretty enthusiastic about it. However, keyword there, most of you guys did really, really well. The average was very, very good. Right? That doesn't mean everyone did very, very well. And you'll figure out in a second what I mean by that. So he's handing around the tests, and today they don't have like unassigned assigned seats, and they also don't have assigned seats. They kind of just sit wherever every single day. So today Theo happened to be sitting behind the spoiled kid, so he'd have a pretty good view of exactly what the spoiled kid got on his test. And Theo did this intentionally because he was just simply really curious. When the teacher was handing back the test, sure enough, right, he hands back tests, the Theo gets his test, and he looks at it quickly, and it's like B. And he's like, all right, I'm happy with that. This was a hard test. It was like B+ or something. He's like, all right, that's very solid. I'm happy with that. And then the spoiled kid gets his test back, and he looks at it as the spoiled kid turns around the piece of paper, and it says like 58%. And the spoiled kid just like flips it over quickly. And at this point, Theo's like, all right, that makes me feel better, man. Like, this kid didn't even try, and, when you don't try, man, you're probably not going to get the best result. It is what it is. Anyways, right, the spoiled kid doesn't take it this well. Such a blatant attack to his ego and his pride is not going to go down quietly. However, it doesn't go down that day. There's been some story times I've done where, spoiled kids have gotten their tests back and they've, fought the teacher in class or something, or called them out or something in class and have had complete mental breakdowns. That doesn't happen till later. That happens at a much later point, and it's a much more interesting turn of events. And this is because the next day, they come into class, and, Theo sits down, and the spoiled kid is nowhere to be seen. And it's very, very strange, and it's very, very, it's weird, because no one is ever really late to class in 4th grade, because it's 4th grade, bro. And eventually, right, 10 minutes later, the spoiled kid comes in with this big grin on his face. And the teacher is like, hey, spoiled kid, doesn't, says his actual name, of course, but he's like, hey, spoiled kid, where have you been? You're 10 minutes late to class. The spoiled kid says, about that. And since he kind of has the attention of everyone, he begins his monologue. And he's like, I know that I was cheated out of an A on that test. And the teacher looks at him kind of like, bro, you failed. All your answers were so wrong. But he's like, I know I was cheated out of an A on that test. And I believe in biblical justice, an eye for an eye, as some say. And everyone's kind of like, what is this kid on? What is going on right now? What is even happening? And he's like, teacher, you betrayed me. You did me wrong. So I will bestow a wrong upon you. And he's trying to have this whole, this intimidating monologue or whatever. And the teacher's like, spoiled kid, you got a bad grade on that test because you obviously didn't study. It's pretty clear. I don't know what to say. And he's like, doesn't matter what you have to say. The punishment has already happened. And the teacher's like, what are you talking about? He's like, go outside and check your car. At this point, the teacher's a little concerned. He's like, what did he do? Did he write something on it? Did he leave a note saying, you suck, man, or something? I don't know. The teacher was like, okay, sure, I'll go outside and check my car. So everyone's just sitting there waiting as the teacher leaves, because the teacher's actually a little bit concerned. He's like, all right, got classes, stay here. I'll be back in a minute. Don't worry about it. The teacher leaves, and the spoiled kid is standing there with a big smile on his face. And eventually, right, the teacher walks back into the class and is like, what did you do to my car? That's unacceptable. That's insane. Go to the principal's office right now. Grabs him by the gruff of his shirt and yanks him out of there. And everyone's just like, oh my God, what just happened? And sure enough, right, everyone in the class is kind of looking at each other like, oh my God, what happened? And the thing is, right, Theo was a good kid. Theo was one who kind of stood by the rules. But the thing is, right, the teacher and the spoiled kid left the class because the teacher yanked him out of there. And Theo was so incredibly curious to know what actually happened that Theo was like, guys, something obviously happened to the teacher's car. I kind of want to go check it out. And another kid in his class, we're going to call him Ben because that's placeholder name for anytime I need a name, that's the placeholder. So Ben was like, hey man, I'll go with you. And Theo's like, all right, bet. So Ben and this kid, or Theo and Ben, right, they go outside, they kind of sneak out of the classroom as, the spoiled kid is being chewed out. And they're just going to say that they both went to the bathroom if the teacher asks and comes back, right? Because there are 2 bathrooms. Multiple people can go to the bathroom when this happens. And if the teacher's mad, oh, you shouldn't have left when I wasn't there, they'll just be like, oh, sorry, we weren't aware. Can't get in that much trouble. So they go out and they go outside and they look at the teacher's lot, and they're very careful because they are aware that I don't know, the principal or the teacher or whatever could return to his car. And they can see it from far enough away, right? Essentially, what the spoiled kid did was he took one of his parents' keys, probably a spare key to the house or something, and he went ahead and keyed the car. And if you don't know what that means, it means you take a key and you scrape into the side of the car, you either scrape a line down it or something. But the spoiled kid wrote keyed into the car this is my revenge, and then he signed it with his name. We'll just say Bob or whatever, this is my revenge dash Bob or whatever, in huge letters across the side of the teacher's car. At this point, right, they were just completely floored because this kid was so mad that since he didn't study, he was punished with a bad grade. Oh my God, man, wow, no one saw that coming. Subscribe if you haven't already. Now go watch another video. There's some on the screen, some recommended. Go watch one. You'll make me very happy. Bye.